Some women don't chase, and yet, they're never forgotten. Their absence echoes louder than presence, and their silence becomes the one sound a man cannot escape. It unsettles him, not because of what she does, but because of what she withholds. Jung might call this the awakening of his shadow, the collision between the ego's illusion of control and the unconscious terror of being unseen. Some women carry a rare kind of power. It is not the power of force, nor the power of persuasion. It is the quiet power of restraint. They do not flood a man with words, nor bend themselves into desperate gestures, nor pursue him when he turns away. Instead, they step back. They withdraw their energy. They retreat into silence, and in doing so, they ignite a fire he cannot smother. This is the forbidden beginning, the moment where attraction turns to mystery, and mystery turns to obsession. For men live in a world built upon attention. The masculine ego is nourished by being noticed, admired, affirmed. It thrives on the gaze of others, especially the gaze of the feminine. To be ignored, then, strikes at the heart of his constructed identity. A woman's silence does not merely deprive him of sound, it deprives him of confirmation. Without her attention, he stands naked before himself. Carl Jung would say that this is where the shadow begins to stir. The shadow is everything one refuses to acknowledge about oneself, the insecurity, the hunger, the fear of inadequacy. When a woman ignores a man, she awakens that shadow. She strips away the illusion that he is always desired, always in control, always worthy of pursuit. Her silence whispers a deeper truth, that he can be dismissed, that he is not sovereign, that his ego is fragile. And nothing unsettles the masculine mind more than fragility exposed. But the woman who ignores does not do so as a calculated move. She does not plot to torment. Her silence is not performance, but preservation. She is simply refusing to spend her sacred energy on someone who cannot meet it. And yet, this refusal shakes him to his core. Because in her absence, he must confront the parts of himself he would rather bury. He must face his own craving for validation, his dependence on being wanted, his inability to remain steady when the mirror of feminine approval is taken away. In this silence, something paradoxical happens. She who vanishes becomes unforgettable. The man may be surrounded by other women, other voices, other possibilities. And still, the one who did not chase remains imprinted on his psyche. Why? Because her absence is not emptiness, it is power. It is the void that speaks, the silence that echoes, the refusal that becomes louder than any pleading could ever be. This is why ignoring a man feels forbidden. It reverses the order of desire. It is the woman who withdraws, and the man who begins to chase shadows. In ignoring him, she dethrones his ego. She awakens not his pride, but his longing. And in that awakening, his shadow rises to meet him. A man believes he desires what is offered freely, but his unconscious craves what eludes him. The woman who ignores him becomes more than a person, she becomes an archetype. She is the anima untouchable, the mirror of his own incompleteness, the phantom he cannot conquer. Her silence stirs his projections. She becomes both angel and threat, the one who refuses to validate the fragile temple of his ego. Desire is never as simple as it seems. On the surface, a man claims to want what is visible, attainable, familiar. He tells himself that love is about availability, about closeness, about certainty. But the unconscious has its own language, a darker, more primal code. Jung revealed that the psyche does not hunger for what is abundant, but for what is scarce, withheld, or mysterious. And so, while a man might reach for what is near, his deepest craving is stirred by what remains just out of reach. The woman who ignores him becomes this unreachable symbol. She is no longer seen as flesh and blood, but as something larger, an archetype, a force, a haunting. Jung called this inner feminine image within a man's psyche the anima. She represents his soul's longing, his hidden vulnerability, his buried need for union. When a real woman withdraws from him, she awakens that anima projection. She becomes untouchable not merely in body, but in essence. She becomes a myth within him. And myths are far more dangerous than reality. The ignored man does not simply miss her presence, he is consumed by the symbolic weight of her absence. She becomes the angel he cannot grasp, the temptress who slips through his hands, the threat to his ego's fragile kingdom. Her silence forces him to project, to imagine qualities she may not even possess, to inflate her into the vessel of his unclaimed desires and unresolved wounds. It is this projection that enslaves him. He is no longer pursuing her as a woman, but as the reflection of his own incompleteness. She is both salvation and torment, both mirror and mirage. By ignoring him, she unconsciously forces him into confrontation with the truth he resists, that no external woman can complete him, that what he seeks in her absence is actually hidden within his own neglected soul. This is why her silence does not weaken her power, it amplifies it. In her refusal to chase, she denies his ego the fuel it craves, and instead awakens something deeper, obsession. He cannot conquer her, because she is not playing in the realm of conquest. She is not bending to the drama of dominance and submission. She has stepped outside of his ego's stage. And from that distance, she becomes larger than life. To him, she is angel and enemy, muse and ghost. He alternates between longing for her and resenting her, between romanticizing her and dismissing her. But the more he resists, the more the projection tightens its grip. She is no longer simply the woman who ignored him. She is the anima untouchable, the forbidden figure who forces him to wrestle with himself. And that is the secret danger of being ignored. It does not erase desire, it magnifies it. The woman who steps back becomes the one he cannot let go, for she embodies the shadow of his own soul. At first, he will mask the sting with pride. He will tell himself he does not care. Yet beneath the surface, something trembles. Jung knew that what is ignored in the conscious mind does not die, it seeps downward, into the unconscious, gaining force. And so, the woman's silence becomes an abyss where he meets himself, his fear of abandonment, his hunger for worth, his secret doubt that he is not enough. When ignored, the masculine psyche rarely reveals its wound immediately. He does not collapse in plain sight. Instead, the first shield he raises is pride. He tells himself, and perhaps even others, that he is unaffected. That her absence is meaningless. That her silence does not touch him. This is the mask of indifference, the armor of ego. Yet behind this performance, the wound begins to pulse. For attention, once lost, does not simply vanish, it echoes. Jung observed that the psyche is never free of what it denies. Repressed emotion is not erased, it is stored. What the conscious mind discards, the unconscious collects. And so, the ignored man, though outwardly calm, begins to unravel inwardly. He feels the tremor of something deeper, an unease that he cannot fully name. The more he insists he does not care, the more the shadow within him grows restless. Her silence becomes an abyss. Not a gentle distance, but a haunting void. In that void, he encounters his rawest fears, the fear of abandonment, the terror of being unworthy, the gnawing suspicion that he is not enough. These are not new fears, they are ancient ones, etched into his psyche long before she appeared. Perhaps they were born in childhood, when a parent's love felt conditional. Perhaps they were carved by past betrayals, by moments of rejection that scarred his trust. Yet her silence brings them back with brutal clarity. This is why ignoring cuts deeper than confrontation. Words can be argued with, accusations can be defended against. But silence offers no target. There is nothing to fight, nothing to fix. There is only emptiness. And in that emptiness, the man cannot escape himself. He must sit with his own insecurity, his own longing, his own fragility. The silence holds a mirror he cannot look away from. The tragedy is that he may not even realize this is happening. He believes he is angry at her, or disappointed in her. But beneath those surface emotions lies something more primal, anger at himself. Anger that he was not enough to hold her attention. Anger that his worth depends so heavily on external validation. Anger that his ego, so carefully constructed, crumbles in the face of absence. Yet this pain is also a hidden gift. For Jung taught that only by facing the shadow can the individual grow. The ignored man is being pulled into his own darkness, forced to acknowledge the fractures he once concealed. And though it feels unbearable, it is in this unbearable silence that transformation begins. The woman's silence is not cruelty. It is truth. It awakens him to the reality he has long avoided. That without the gaze of others, without the constant reassurance of being wanted, he must learn to find his own worth. The feminine who ignores does not do so from cruelty, but from alignment. She does not wrestle for scraps of affection, because she has touched the deeper well of her own value. This detachment is not numbness, it is power. Like the Stoics, she understands that desire chains the soul, and freedom is born the moment one no longer kneels for attention. She steps back not to punish him, but to preserve herself. The woman who ignores is often misunderstood. To the untrained eye, she appears cold, distant, perhaps even manipulative. But her silence is not born of bitterness. It is born of alignment. She has recognized a truth that many resist, that to beg for love is to abandon oneself, and to pursue endlessly is to become enslaved by longing. Her withdrawal is not an act of cruelty, but of preservation. She chooses not to spill her sacred energy where it will not be honored. This woman has touched the deeper well of her own value. She knows that her worth is not defined by his recognition, nor by his willingness to stay. Her worth is not fragile, not conditional, not hanging in the balance of his attention. It is rooted, steady, alive within her. She has walked the path of shadow work, confronted the parts of herself that once pleaded, that once chased, that once believed she was incomplete without him. Now, she stands whole. And in this wholeness, she no longer bargains for scraps of affection. Her detachment is not numbness, but clarity. She feels, but she does not drown. She desires, but she does not kneel. She longs, but she does not lose herself. This is what makes her powerful. She mirrors the Stoics, who taught that desire is a chain, a rope that binds the soul to the whims of another. Freedom, they said, comes only when one masters that desire, when one becomes complete in the absence of external affirmation. She has absorbed this truth, whether consciously or intuitively. By ignoring him, she does not seek to manipulate. She does not play a game of cat and mouse. She steps back because she refuses to be diminished. She understands that love cannot be forced, that attraction loses its soul when chased to exhaustion. Her silence is an act of self-respect, a refusal to exhaust herself in proving her worth to someone who does not yet see it. And this silence, though misunderstood, carries an undeniable magnetism. For nothing unsettles a man more than a woman who does not beg. Nothing captivates him more than a woman who does not chase. In her refusal, she radiates the quiet message, I am enough, with or without you. And it is this message that echoes louder than pleading ever could. Her withdrawal is not punishment. It is protection. She protects her energy, her heart, her sacredness. She has learned that her power lies not in convincing a man to choose her, but in choosing herself regardless of him. And so, she turns inward. She anchors herself in her own worth. She preserves her silence not as a weapon, but as a sanctuary. The ignored man may misinterpret her, but the truth remains, her silence is her strength. It is the refusal to kneel before desire, the refusal to abandon herself for fleeting validation. In preserving herself, she becomes untouchable. And in becoming untouchable, she becomes unforgettable. Here lies the forbidden psychology. The more she retreats into silence, the more he projects onto her. In her absence, she becomes larger, not smaller. The man who once dismissed her now finds himself haunted. She becomes the ungraspable symbol of his unclaimed self. This is why his obsession grows, why he circles her like a moth before the flame. It is not the woman herself that intoxicates him, but the mirror she unknowingly holds. Absence does something presence never can, it magnifies. A woman who withdraws does not shrink in the mind of a man, she expands. The further she pulls into silence, the larger she becomes in his imagination. This is the forbidden psychology, the paradox Jung understood. What the ego resists becomes more powerful, what is denied gains weight, what is ignored grows in shadow. At first, he may dismiss her. He may tell himself she was ordinary, replaceable, easy to forget. But time, joined with silence, transforms this narrative. The ignored man soon discovers that the woman who does not chase him cannot be erased. She begins to appear in his thoughts at night, not as she was, but as he imagines her. The memory of her smile sharpens, the sound of her laughter lingers, the way she once looked at him becomes mythologized. Slowly, she becomes larger than life. This is not because of who she is, but because of what she represents. Jung would say she has become an archetype, not a woman of flesh and blood, but a symbol projected upon by his unconscious. She now embodies everything he longs for, everything he fears, everything he cannot reconcile within himself. She is the anima untouchable, the elusive spirit of his own inner world, and he cannot conquer her. For to conquer her would mean to conquer the depths of himself. Projection is a dangerous alchemy. He begins to attribute to her qualities she may not even possess. She becomes his fantasy, his muse, his lost salvation. She becomes, at once, the angel who could redeem him and the temptress who torments him. In truth, she is simply living her life, detached, whole, beyond his grasp. Yet in his psyche, she becomes the mirror of his unclaimed self. She reflects back the love he never gave himself, the validation he always sought from others, the intimacy he fears yet craves. This is why obsession grows in silence. It is not her presence that binds him, but her absence. It is not her words that intoxicate, but her refusal to speak them. He circles her like a moth before a flame, unable to touch, unable to leave. For the flame is not her, but the burning need within his own soul, a need her silence has awakened. The forbidden psychology is this: she does not become powerful by chasing him, but by withdrawing from him. The act of ignoring unsettles not because it wounds his pride, but because it awakens his unconscious. In the absence of her validation, he is left alone with himself, and the self is often unbearable. He does not obsess over her because of who she is, but because of what she mirrors. She is the reminder of what he lacks, the reflection of what he represses, the echo of the love he has never truly known within. She becomes unforgettable, not because she tried to stay, but because she dared to disappear.